Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show that we discuss all things political. We bring you top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'm Ruben Abati, your host for This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. I'd like to welcome our special guest for today. We have right here in the studio with us Professor Bola Akinterewa. We also have joining us our resident guest, Deputy Editor at Sunday This Day, Olawale Olaleye.
Good afternoon, sir.
And then, of course, also here is Ayo Tereba, the CEO of Economic Associates.
Good evening.
Joining us later, of course, will be Yemi Adamolekun, who is the Director General of the Enough is Enough Group. Well, welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. We have quite a bit to talk about today. So let's get right into it with the top stories of the week. And Wale is here, mercifully enough, to do what he does every week. Wale, what has been happening in Nigeria and around the world in the last week?
Well, quite interestingly, a lot has been happening around the world, and particularly back home here. I'd like to say congratulations to our president. He's 75 years old today.
President is 75.
Yes.
And it's been a lot of celebration.
Yes, indeed. Reasons to celebrate. You know, he's walked through the valley of the shadow of death a few times, and he's back to life. So we rejoice with him. Also in the week, the governor of Rivers State also turned 50.
Just 50?
Just 50. Okay. I was
surprised.
Also happy birthday to him.
Of Rivers State.
Yes. Well, one of the issues that dominated the talk in the week was the $1 billion request to fight terrorism by the president. And I think he's been able to pull through because the Governors Forum had come out to say they were behind him. So far, so good. The PDP might have their points, really, but again, we've got no amount is too much, actually, to combat or ensure security of lives and property. So,
yeah, except that this is $1 billion they are requesting for after technically defeating Boko Haram.
I said it, so it's subject to debate.
And the Jonathan administration has been victimized.
You're very right. I agree. You're very right.
So there's a lot of issues there.
Yes. And then the FG also in the week released balance of the Paris Club reform to about 27 states. The army, in a feat which may kind of justify the demand for the $1 billion, reportedly captured 220 terrorists in different operations. They are sweeping operations across the country, and I think that is commendable. Power generation hit highest level this month, about 5.10, 5,000 megawatts, and I think we might be getting somewhere with power. Kudos to the power minister, Mr. Babajide Fashola. Kaduna State celebrated centenary this week also, and I think
Kaduna State.
Yeah, Kaduna.
Oh, Kaduna.
Kaduna.
Okay.
Kaduna. And then our appeal court has ordered a retrial of just three of the count charges for the Senate President as it is.
Well, Wale, we'll take on some of these issues. I see you have a very long list. So much happened around the world,
yes.
Across Africa and in Nigeria. But something is happening in South Africa, which is quite interesting. The race to replace South Africa's President Jacob Zuma is on as thousands of delegates of the ruling African National Congress gather to elect a new leader today. The new ANC leader is likely to become South Africa's next president in 2019 elections. The two clear frontrunners are Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, former chair of the African Union Commission and Zuma's ex-wife. The selection is expected to be announced tomorrow. Joining me now to give us the latest updates on ANC's elections in Johannesburg is Justice Malala. Hi, Justice.
Good evening.
Hi, Justice. Good to see you. Welcome to This Day Live. Here is Justice Malala. Now, what is the situation now in South Africa with the elections?
Well, finally, after 2 days of delays and so forth, we're beginning to see nominations have taken place. Elections will take place overnight into Monday. Hopefully, as you said in your introduction, by tomorrow evening, we'll have a result and we'll know who is the new leader of the ANC between Cyril Ramaphosa, a businessman and a long-term anti-apartheid fighter, and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who has been a former cabinet minister and a former AU Commission chairperson.
Yeah, you are on record, Justice, as having said, look, there is a plan to impose a unity candidate and to prolong a dynasty. Do you see this happening, or you think that there is better prospects for both the ANC and the people of South Africa?
Ruben, I'm not sure that I got that question, but if you're talking about a unity candidate,
yes.
We have only 2 candidates now. There were 7 initially, and then it was whittled down, and there was talk of a unity candidate to bring this warring party together. But right now, it's a binary situation. It's 2 people up against each other, and it really is the Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and the Ramaphosa factions. There is no middle way. So my expectation is that after this, this contest, whoever wins will battle to bring the party together and have one voice. There have been much speculation here that perhaps if Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma wins and the legacy of President Jacob Zuma continues through her, you will remember that he is a big supporter of her candidacy, that they go a long way. In fact, they used to be married and got divorced in 1997, but are on very good terms. Many people see the continuation of his legacy through her win. So unity, many people will say that the ANC would likely split if Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma wins. Many people are saying Cyril Ramaphosa is more likely to win right now. The odds look good for him, and they think that the ANC has more of a chance to stay together and perhaps even win the 2019 elections if he comes through as the winner.
Justice, you've been on record as saying that since President Zuma took over, that South Africa has been on the brink, on the descent, more or less to say. Do you still hold that position, or you think that President Zuma has been a positive force?
I think President Zuma, let's look at the numbers, Ruben. When President Zuma became head of the ANC in 2007, the economy had been growing at 5.9% year on year for 4 years. When he came to power in 2009, unemployment was at 20%. Today, the economy is at 0.7% GDP growth. Today, unemployment has gone from 20% to 27%. So has he been good for South Africa? Many people say, and I agree with this, President Zuma has led an assault on the judiciary, on the media, on NGOs and other civil society bodies. He's led an assault on institutions of state. Many people say the corruption that has risen under him cannot even be investigated because he's dismantled many of the institutions that are supposed to do this. What has the past 10 years been? In my view, we went from Nelson Mandela, a giant on the continental political landscape, to Thabo Mbeki, another giant. You will remember that he worked very closely with President Olusegun Obasanjo of Nigeria. Those 2 men put the idea of African unity, African independence on the map. And after that, you had Jacob Zuma, and his record, quite frankly, has been poor and dire. And many South Africans are very clear that President Zuma should see the door. What the ANC itself decides is another matter altogether. But I wouldn't say that the Jacob Zuma years have been the best for this country.
Well, Justice, one more question. With all these contradictions in South Africa, is there a sense of nostalgia, shared nostalgia among South Africans, particularly, black South Africans, if I may put it like that? Hello? Did you hear me?
Ruben, I'm sorry, would you repeat that question? I didn't get it.
Yeah,
You
I was
spoke
saying
about,
that, is there a feeling of
divisions?
shared nostalgia across South Africa since President Mandela died, since the ANC took over power, and you had other persons taking over in South Africa? You had that?
Ruben, thanks. That question is yes, I got that. Yes, there is a sense that as a country, South Africa, from 1994, Nelson Mandela taking over the reins, that South Africa was a country that was going up. Under Thabo Mbeki, we became a very proud African nation. We were very proud to be involved in so many of the ideas that were propagated by him, Olusegun Obasanjo, many others, Abdoulaye Wade, and so forth and so forth. After those two giants, South Africa went through the years of Jacob Zuma. And I can tell you now, when Nelson Mandela passed in 4 years ago, when people looked back and said, we meant something. Under Jacob Zuma, we have become the laughingstock of the continent. We have become the laughingstock of the world. And there is nostalgia for those years when we stood cheek by jowl, stood next to Nigerians, stood next to Kenyans, stood next to anyone from all over the world and said, yes, we are somebody. So yes, there's a lot of nostalgia. And actually, to your question, what is happening now with this election inside the ANC? Many people are saying it's a battle for the soul of the ANC. The battle for the soul of the ANC of Nelson Mandela, or an ANC that will become corrupt and will face diminishing returns well into the future and will wither and die like many liberation movements in many other parts of the world. Many people want to choose the way of Nelson Mandela and not the way of destruction that many believe Jacob Zuma has led South Africa on.
A final question, Justice. If Zuma wins, what does it mean for South Africa? If Ramaphosa wins, what does it mean for South Africa?
There are really two ways. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma represents much of the Jacob Zuma years. She is surrounded by President Jacob Zuma's keen supporters. If Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma wins tomorrow, this is my prediction. The currency, the rand, will take a major beating against major currencies. The currency will suffer, will weaken over the next few weeks. And over the next 2 months, we will face yet another downgrade by some of the major ratings agencies. Moody's will report in February, and I will tell you now that we will become what is termed junk status in the ratings of those agencies. Confidence in South Africa will plummet, and business will think once or twice or 3 times. If this day Nigeria wants to come back and reinvest in this country, you will say, ooh, should we be doing this in South Africa? It's a negative for South Africa. If Cyril Ramaphosa wins, whether he will be a good president or not, what will happen is that confidence will rush back into the system. People will say a new leadership is taking over and South Africa is on the up and up. Those are the two scenarios, and I believe that if the ANC, whichever it chooses, it knows very clearly what will happen with both scenarios. So this is momentous decision-making time for the ANC, and it's up to them. It's up to those 5,000 delegates, 4,700 delegates, to make the right choice. We'll know by tomorrow evening which choice they have made.
Thank you very much, Justice, for joining us. Thank you very much for being part of this day live. That was Justice Malala speaking to us from South Africa. Justice Malala, a Rice News analyst. Now, gentlemen, you listen to Justice Malala. What's your take on the situation in South Africa and with the election that is going on, with all the delays and the anxiety about the ANC? Yes.
Right. interesting development. It keeps reminding me of the situation we got in recent weeks at Zimbabwe, in which somebody who got into power through liberation struggle wanted to impose his wife. And the veterans, the people who are involved in his liberation struggle, who saw his deputy as a natural successor, kicked against it, and it took the threat of impeachment for him to resign and let the VP take over. A similar situation is shaping up in South Africa, in which Jacob Zuma, who got to the pinnacle because of his independence struggle, his background in struggling for independence. He has a deputy, they were both elected based on their history in the struggle. Now wishes to push up his wife. Now that his own time, his ex-wife, now that his time, is running out. It remains to be seen. In Zimbabwe, they were able to resolve it, in favor of a track record of struggle. So let's see how they are going to resolve it. The only other thing that the gentleman who is running against the president's ex-wife,
Ramaphosa,
is a major shareholder in Standard Bank, who owns, the Stanbic, the parent of MTN, I think. I think he once was chairman of Standard Bank. It's interesting, so he has ties, very strong ties.
Yes, Wale, you were going to say something.
Coming from the days of Mandela through Thabo Mbeki, I'm not sure we've seen a South African president, so disrespected by his people, spoken to so condescendingly on the parliament, and at every, given opportunity, threatened with impeachment back and forth. He's actually survived a few attempts at taking him off that seat. And when you look at the state of South Africa today, I think his time is up, really, and I think he should just go. So coming back, by extension, through his ex-wife might be very difficult. I don't actually see her, winning. It will be.
Well, I mean, this perpetual tagging of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as ex-wife, don't forget, that's in her own right. She has earned her spouse.
Certainly.
Okay,
No,
so
truly.
we should be careful.
I agree.
With this feminist tagging.
True
She's been minister. She was part of the revolution. She was part of the struggle.
Oh, yes. Say so.
Oh, yes. She was part of, she has led the African Union. So on her own, she's a capable person.
The same way you cannot also
this sexist interpretation.
No, it's not sexist. No. It's just the same way you cannot also underplay the fact that they still have something in common. They have this influence, they share, between the both of them. And a majority of the people would actually see her reign as an extension of Zuma's. You can't, even if she was going to be different, it would be difficult convincing the people that she was going to be different.
So this is probably a situation whereby
it's perception. Perception, and image transfer. So she's going to have to bear that burden.
Okay, Prof, I come to you last on this topic before we come back home to Nigeria.
You see, Justice Malala gave us a very good background for analysis. And that leads me to, first of all, make the first observation that Zuma tried to do his best. He actually did his best. The only thing is that his best was not good enough for the people of South Africa. We are able to substantiate this because already he gave us some statistical analysis that growth rate, 5 point something.
Disappeared.
And that one, right? And unemployment from 20% now to 27%.
Yeah.
So when you take a critical look at that, now asking anybody, did he do well? It's obvious. But the issue is that in trying to do his best, he committed different he made different mistakes. Atrocities. So at that level, you cannot expect Zuma, accused on daily basis of corruption here, of womanizing, of different things, and then still expect that people wouldn't want to have a change. You see, that's the first point. You see, the second point there, when we are looking at who is going to succeed, if you look at the issue of Mrs. Vladimir Zuma, ex-wife, can you really say because they have been separated that they have not been cooperating?
Absolutely.
I will argue to the contrary to say when Dr. Mrs. Zuma, quote and unquote, was to contest for the position of the of chairperson AU, please, this same ex-husband, all right, took the matter as if it was his own problem. He gave active support to the ex-wife. By that time, Nigeria's position was to support the Gabonese, candidate.
Yeah, with the Chinese connection.
With the Chinese connection.
And we have done a lot to get the Chinese to support the African Union.
Precisely. You cannot be more correct. The issue was that there is a gentleman agreement between the P5 of Africa, P5 in the UN permanent members, but the P5 in Africa, that is the Big Five, had an understanding that for all these positions in Africa, none of the Big Five will contest. That was the understanding. It was on this basis that Nigeria supported
Gabon.
Yes, who was, already an AU man. But now, Zuma, one of the Big Five, changed position, supported the ex-wife, all right, and brought a different kettle of fish to the table. So in this case, when we are explicating the issues involved, no, there's no big deal about ex-wife or not being ex-wife. The issue now is that Ruben was quite right. You see, we are going to have a situation which Ayo clearly painted from Zimbabwe to South Africa. All right? Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe wanted the wife, the actual wife,
Grace.
the existing wife, Grace. Now, this time, we are going to have Zuma bringing not the wife, not the ex-wife, to sustain the legacy.
His own
personal something.
Yes.
So this is a critical issue. African leaders, scholars, scientists must begin to look at modality for succeeding. We need to study this more critically because I see this as a new approach to changing the existing rule. African Union says under no circumstance will there be any change of government by force. Now, what is happening is that there is no military coup anymore. As we could see in Zimbabwe, the military is not a coup. But now there is an understanding between the civilian and the military to now have a change of position. And Zuma now...
I think the point is clear. What we're dealing with is succession politics in Africa.
Precisely.
Either at the party level or at the government level. But what is important is that there must be internal democracy.
Absolutely.
And that political parties in Africa must be strengthened. And there must be such structures that can deliver in line with the expectations of the people.
Yeah.
Okay? But we'll see how the situation in South Africa, the ANC plays out, because the ANC...
Mrs. Mugabe wasn't so lucky. Let's see if Mrs. Zuma...
The ANC, the oldest political party in Africa, and I think it's important that they get it right. But Prof, just before we move on, for the benefit of our listeners, we were talking about the Big Five in Africa. I guess you mean Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt. If you can just give us that list of The big five.
P5.
Yes.
And then we'll move on.
Yes, we have Nigeria, we have South Africa, we have Ethiopia, we have Libya, we have Algeria. Okay. Those are, and the determination is based on the fact that they pay 15% of the assessed dues of all the members. The 5 now 15 times 5 is equal to 75%. All the other 49 members of the AU, they account for the rest. For the budget of the
Okay, thank you very much. We've been talking about South Africa, but also in Nigeria recently, on November 10th to be precise, we had more or less a similar situation with the party that wants to describe itself as the largest political party in Africa. The emphasis is on largest.
December 9.
And that was when the PDP National Elective Convention produced Prince Uche Secondos as the new chairman of the party. He defeated 3 other contestants to emerge victorious in a keenly contested election. 21 new national officers were also elected who will pilot the party's affairs in the next 4 years. Now, this has been creating dispute among party members who are aggrieved with the results. The People's Democratic Party Committee on Reconciliation, led by its chairman, is meeting with aggrieved chairmanship candidates and party leaders. The chairman of the committee has said the leaders of the party visited by the committee made clear statements about their commitments to the unity of the party. What do you all think? Fair or foul play? Did the PDP get it right? I wrote a column on this, which has been controversial, in which I raised a number of questions.
Yes.
This is not about my personal views. We all witnessed it.
Yeah.
Now, Wale, you monitor the process.
Yes.
What's your assessment?
I'll take it from where Prof dropped it last week. I'll agree that there were some kind of scientific manipulation, in the process. I agree.
No, it's that there was scientific fraud.
Yes, but I want to modulate my own language use now.
Yeah.
Scientific manipulation of the process. I agree. And then you also agree that this so-called unity list, came with an understanding with a majority of the people. And it was not, yes, you could say, even if the names of those people they desired were put underneath, they would still go ahead and vote for them. So it was an understanding, which I ordinarily didn't think it was that bad. It's just, give and take in the course of, having our way, around an issue. And I think it's political, us trading and all of that. I'm not very much averse to that. But now, that said, the election has been held and the new executive is in place. It's fine. They have begun a reconciliatory move, and I think everybody should come together. We actually need PDP, to put APC on its toes. So we need the PDP as a house, together. And I like the fact that the aggrieved parties have begun to show keen interest. Professor Adeniroy has even written, he did an advertorial thanking his people and then giving in to whatever it is. Even Body Judge has come out to say he has no problem with the leadership. Benga Daniel too, he has been visited. I think it is running smooth. Whether or not you like it, PDP it has a way of managing some crisis in a way that mesmerizes,
But is PDP managing the crisis so well that it will be able to transform into a strong opposition party and probably displace the APC in 2019?
Yeah. I was a part of the discussion 3 weeks ago, ahead of the convention.
Oh, you become a party man.
And
that's interesting.
He's actually APC.
Yeah. So,
He's APC.
You can't tag me as APC.
Okay, he's worried.
I'm not partisan.
Go on with your point. This is not a partisan
my sympathy and support for the President Buhari administration. But I'm not a member of any party. Right. So our issue then was that the party looked disunited ahead of the convention.
Yes.
And were they going to come out of that convention more united and therefore stronger to the point of posing a credible threat to APC? My worry is that the impression of disunity as a fallout of that, particularly seemingly estranging a bloc, the understanding ahead of the convention was that the Southwest should produce the chair And it seems that some people, thought better. And the outcome has been that the Southwest didn't produce this year. Somebody from another region was on the unity list. The news should not be ignored, of people massively leaving the PDP and declaring for the APC. The last example being, was it 3,000?
What happened in Oyo State?
3,000 people, including so many former governors, etc. So this is December, and there is an election February, March.
2019.
Yeah, 15 months' time. So it was the fights among chairmen ahead of the convention. Now there is fights among regions. So key question is, let's see how soon it will be.
Well, Prof, very clear before we take a break. Let me go to Prof. The specific issue now is about the PDP from being a national party. People are now saying it's a South-South party. And that, it's factionalized within. And these reconciliation moves may not necessarily solve the problem that has arisen from the PDP convention. What do you think?
Well, it wouldn't solve the problem for a completely different reason. The reason is that I've never seen how a panel beater can now suddenly become a manufacturing engineer. The PDP is now engaged, no longer in change in continuity, but continuity in change. The issue is that the foundation of the election itself, I still insist, is a scientific fraud. Even if you use the word manipulation, manipulation is a component of fraud. How do you commit a fraud? It can be by manipulation. So it is still fraudulent. The point is that there were some candidates whose names were not on the unity list, but who campaigned until the last minute. Now, I am saying that for as long as there is a manifestation, an expression of dishonesty, all right, at the level of voting, coming thereafter to be panel beating, all right, appealing to people, and they now come out to advertise, doesn't remove from the fact of dishonesty at the foundation level. And I am saying that for as long as election will not be predicated on honesty of purpose, please, we are deceiving ourselves in this country.
Well, I mean, Prof, your point is clear. The point
Sir,
is
before
very
you
clear.
go on break, I think it's important that we establish that that list was not official. Their name was not on the list, but their names were on the ballots.
Anyway, what is important?
They voted for the list, not on the
What is
ballot.
It was announced that it was a trade-off.
So, yeah, that's where the mistake is.
If I may provide a summary, what is important, I think, is that the PDP is trying to get its acts together. It may not have learned some lessons when it organized its convention. But
Evidently.
after the event, we have seen some evidence that the PDP is trying to learn some lessons from what happened in the past. When the 7 governors, who became 5, left the party, there was a lot of arrogance on the part of the
party, absolutely.
Now we see in the last 2-3 days a party that has learned the lesson of humility. And it's been going around
True, absolutely. Very
reconcile, to plead with people. So I think that the
defection of the 5 governors was a game changer.
I think that the criticism
at the time.
I think that the criticism has helped. Okay, and we would like to see the PDP developing into a strong party. Now the INEC, the Electoral Commission in Nigeria, has registered 21 new political parties, bringing the total number to about 67. So it looks like, indeed, the 2019 electoral process is going to be really tough, really keen, really competitive. And if at the end of the day it delivers on the side of the Nigerian people, then the purpose of democracy will have been served. And I think that should be our own expectation and our objective.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. There's a special breed of achievers out there that are called tomorrow's people, the highly creative ones who live in the future. They imagine what will be and strive to make it happen. They're bold. They refuse to wait for the future. Tomorrow bends and conforms to their ideas. At Access Bank, we share the same sentiments. We've been able to grow our bank to become a leading player in Nigeria with a strong presence across the continent, adopting best practice in everything we do. Our mantra for success is simple: speed, service, and security. Those who shape tomorrow strive for and demand perfection. At Access Bank, our service culture of speedy response and drive for excellence is the blueprint for creating customer experiences that will echo for generations. Come, let's work together and take tomorrow.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Governors from Nigeria's 36 states have approved the withdrawal of $1 billion from the excess crude account by the federal government to be used in the ongoing fight against Boko Haram insurgents in the Northeast. They came to this resolution at the 83rd National Economic Council meeting in Abuja. This decision will leave the excess crude account with a balance of $1.31 billion. Last year, President Buhari announced to the world that Nigeria technically won the war against Islamist Boko Haram militants. Joining us now in this conversation is Yemi Adamolekun of Enough is Enough. Yemi, welcome.
Good evening.
Good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? This has generated a lot of controversy in the last few days.
Economists, what do you think?
Does the federal government have the right to say, look, the governors can give it the authority to take $1 billion from the excess crude account?
The excess crude account is jointly owned by the different tiers of government in the federation.
So 3 tiers.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Of which, it's only the federal and the states that have voices. I don't think that the local governments have much of a big say. It so happens that while there is a rule guiding the accrual of funds into the excess crude account, there are no, hard and fast rules about disbursement. So it could be consultative. In the past, it was through the National Economic Council. In other words, it's in consultation with states, and it could be arbitrary. However, the issue connecting with what they want to use it for is also the discretion of the federal government. If the federal government feels that such funds are required to keep up the fight against Boko Haram, you have to, respect that they might have information that you and I do not have.
No, but we've always been hiding under security to expend money without accountability. There is a budget, all right, for the Northeast, for this Boko Haram something. Mr. President already came up with a special budget for fighting Boko Haram. Secondly, there is the issue of due process as well. You see, as we have rightly pointed out, that there is no fast rule about disbursement. The mere fact that there is no fast rule, does that mean that Mr. President will not carry along the National Assembly? Shouldn't that one be also considered and approved by the National Assembly?
But there's no rule for that. So I guess that's the point he's making. Since he doesn't have to, he can basically do it without.
No. You see, when we have problem of insecurity, true enough, Ruben rightly reminded us about the technical defeat of Boko Haram.
Yeah.
Who talks about technical defeat is now saying that at the end of the day, Boko Haram is no longer more of a serious threat.
Yeah.
Now, when you are now going to withdraw money, and you are not going through the process, even if we talk about no fast rule, please, if there is no fast rule, then we must have a slow rule, process in going about it. You cannot just withdraw money anyhow.
If I parallel to 2014, by the way, I think under the Jonathan administration, they were asking for a loan of $1 billion. It wasn't excess crude that they were trying to use $1 billion for. I don't remember actually. But I think for me, it's an interesting parallel that under the Jonathan administration, we're also looking for $1 billion to fight Boko Haram. At that time, we did not say Boko Haram had been technically defeated. Boko Haram was still very much on the cards at the time. But I think to your point, it's for me, the timing. And secondly, for a terrorist threat that you've claimed has been technically defeated, and this is not to discredit anything the army has done, but the narrative of how far the army has gone does not tally with now this new request for $1 billion. And it just seems like $1 billion is the administration's favorite.
You see, the issue to address there is that the issue of this escrowed account itself has been controversial. People have been asking.
It's illegal.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. It was set up under Olusegun Obasanjo. Yeah. And since that
so if an illegal structure is set up that has no hard and fast rules for withdrawal, then where do you start?
That's the more reason why you consult with others.
The point of it, of course, is that, look, this escrowed account, as pointed out, is collectively owned, right? But at least one governor has said that it's not part of it, the governor of Ekiti State. And some people have also said it is surprising that, look, PDP governors who are part of that cabinet are even buying into it. Does it mean that, look,
which cabinet?
The Economic Council. Okay, the Economic Council. That's what I mean. Okay. Now, that, they also bought into it. Does it mean that there's no opposition again? These PDP governors, have they become members of the APC? And one governor who has said no. Can he say, for example, that, look, my state's share of the SS group, don't add it to more than 1 billion. And there's also, of course, the issue of the National Assembly. There are persons in the National Assembly who are saying this will not pass.
Which is good.
The fundamental problem with the whole exercise is that, look, there's no breakdown as to what the amount of money, 1 billion, not naira, billion dollars.
Which is about half of what is
precisely
there. Yeah.
So what is it going to be expended on? So they need to show more of accountability. You see, the issue is that in Nigeria, the government, either federal or state, doesn't have to account to anybody when it comes to money set aside for security. All right? An amount of money is just set aside. And then the governor and the president, the government, they spend it the way they want.
Which is actually very interesting because Dasuki, who was a national security advisor, is still being held by this administration for money spent under his watch, under the blanket of security that has no account. I mean, some people have returned some of the money, but he's still being held. So if you make a big deal around this fight against corruption, you're holding someone who was in charge of your security budget for sort of dispersing it nilly-willy. Now you wake up and decide you want to spend half of your excess crude, which is supposed to be your savings, on security, because on a threat that you said is no longer a threat.
You cannot be more correct.
A threat's no longer a threat. You have to be
they said it themselves.
You have to be careful, when I saw the Minister of Information being quoted as saying that since they got to power,
there hasn't been any explosions. Which was not true.
Well, so
was it true?
When you say that you declare, Boko Haram to be technically
defeated,
similar to the pronouncements being made by different countries about the Islamic State, and technically they're finished. But that doesn't mean that every member of the movement is dead or has been killed or has surrendered. So there are still,
I'm not disputing that. We're still looking for 113 Chibok girls which are still missing.
So it doesn't mean that you don't need money
But I'm just
keep
saying
them
that the narrative
in defeat.
the narrative is worrisome. The figure, as Prof has said, is quite arbitrary. The timing is questionable. And so, I mean, especially in the, I mean, the point is just the context within which it's
and we should be
being
careful
dispersed.
about the comparisons with the Dasuki case, who was known to have misappropriated money meant for.
All I said was
he was not
alleged.
alleged, because it hasn't been
when many people have
But
been
he hasn't
funded.
been convicted.
When many people have
Because
been
he hasn't
funded.
been-
No,
some
you
have been
should be
funded, but
careful
he
with your choice
hasn't
of words.
been convicted. No, Mr. Teriba, no, the point that Prof was making, which is really for me very, very clear, is the fact that once you say something is security,
Yes.
then you can appropriate money and spend at will. Now, for me, a greater threat in this context, to be quite honest, is Nigeria's education system and Nigeria's health sector. But we have not declared either one of them to be in any state of emergency. We're graduating graduates who can't speak English, who can't work. I mean, people are having, most of the people you are having who have jobs and are creating businesses for themselves are self-taught. Thank God for the internet.
Well,
So,
let me ask
I mean, within that
this
context,
question.
I think it's...
Now, is there a link between this and the Pariclof reform that is going to the states? Is it possible that the states seeing that, look, some big money from the Pariclof reform is coming, okay, let's trade off and allow the federal government to take $1 billion from the ECA?
While we get some money.
Well, I doubt.
Is this some
I doubt
odds trading?
that's the case, and you know the governors also have to rely on their own judgment, and I do not think that the council is bound by a minority. I'm sure that they will have their rules for taking decisions. If they say majority, by what majority? The fact that there is one dissenting
voice,
No, you see,
out of 36.
President Buhari can have a very good case for asking for this money, but they have to follow certain logic. If, for instance, if he is advised to tell the Nigerian public that, look, now ISIS in Asia, all right, in the Middle East, everywhere, the Western world has succeeded in virtually neutralizing them. And as it is being expected that the Africans that have been fighting for them will be coming back to Africa. It is being alleged or it's being speculated that they will come and join Boko Haram in Nigeria to fight. Then this may require additional funding. That can be a very good logic. So let them talk along this line. Let them tell us we are going to have this number of armored cars, this type of something.
Provided no justification.
Precisely. But you see,
but that then, when you are talking
for me, it's
security,
not that level of
there's a
detail.
limit,
Yes,
to the amount
I
of information
understand
you
that.
expect the
What
government
we are
to.
saying is this. Please,
Then it's
don't
not,
just-
it's
no.
not security anymore.
Hold on. It is still security. Please, what is security? Take CIA journals, reports. They talk much, even in details, about their operations.
Some do.
30 years after, that is archival materials.
And that's
You
history.
can read
That's
that one.
history.
That's history.
No, no,
Not,
When they've lifted the embargo
correct
on
ones.
documents.
Well, we see what is happening
We'll
to...
return to this.
We see what is
Sorry,
going
sir,
to
last thing to say before we
Donald Trump
close.
now.
Sorry, sir. The last thing to say before we close is that part of the fight against insecurity in Nigeria is also not being fought alone by the Nigerian government. I mean, as part of the conversation around the NGO bill, a lot of international NGOs are doing work providing social services in the Northeast. So that's not, if we want to talk about budget, that's not even part of our budget.
Well, but Nigerians are anxious because this is about money.
Of course.
Once Nigerians hear money being,
Shared by government and governors.
they get worried.
Oh, yes.
And the Fayose, the governor of Ekiti State, he is saying that, look, this money maybe is money to be used for the election in 2019. But that remains to be proven.
He says a lot of things. If
Well,
you're talking
you are watching this day live. We have to go on break. Yeah, we've got to go on break. I know you are all excited. You are still watching this day live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. We'll take a break and we'll be back shortly.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Then think Zenith, one of the biggest in Nigeria, with assets over $16 billion, listed among the 20 most influential brands in the world, and winner of Best Bank in Corporate Governance. The most customer-focused bank in Nigeria, a success built on 3 foundations, dedicated to people, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Nigerians have reacted to the issue of Muslim law graduate who was denied call to bar for wearing the hijab at the recent call to bar ceremony of the Nigerian Law School. Fidaus, a graduate of the University of Ilorin, was denied entry into the hall where the ceremony held by officials of the Council of Legal Education for failing to remove her hijab as directed. The case has attracted significant attention on social media, with Nigerians divided on her decision and that of the authorities of the law school. While some are in support of her decision in respect of constitutional right to freedom of religion, others condemn an action, insisting that the law school is no respecter of religion. Therefore, laws should be obeyed. Very controversial issue. We have the enough is enough constitutional lawyer here. Yeah, I mean, should she have worn the hijab when we know clearly that the Nigerian Law School provides for the new weeks guidelines as to how they should appear on the day of the call to bar?
Well, I read an interview that she gave, and her decision was very deliberate. So for her, it was a protest. She knew the consequences. So it was a protest action, which, in that sense, yes, she should have, because she wanted to make a point. But I wonder, I mean, I don't know how long this has been going, if there have been any issues. What kind of conversations has happened within the Council for Legal Education, if anyone has made a formal petition? If she tried to have a conversation and was rebuffed and then decided that the way to get attention was to actually try to attempt to wear it on the day of her graduation. As we often say, the Constitution is supreme. The Constitution guarantees you right to religion. This is an expression of her religion. Does it stop her from being a lawyer or practice law? No. The wig that we wear, someone would say, is also
in England, they are even trying to change the attire. You know.
So we are still having that. But I think for me, what's important in the conversation really is that it was a deliberate choice that she made because she wanted to highlight the issue and bring it to attention, which she's done. The second bit is that it's not anything against Muslims, or it's not an anti-Islam law, which, I mean, some parts of social media are going off on. It's basically that the Council of Legal Education has clear rules of what you can or cannot wear. And it's not about, it doesn't specify hijab particularly as in being anti-Muslims. And I think we need to take that away. And also, when you're coming into law school, apparently you sign that you understand that these are the rules, and in a sense, you've accepted it. So for me, it will be very interesting to see how it pans out. Because first of all, she's not to become a practicing lawyer now, she's lost a year. So for someone to make that sort of deliberate choice to sacrifice a year to make a case, I think it's impressive.
But in spite of all this, I guess she will still get a chance to be called to the bar, maybe at the next call to bar ceremony.
Yeah, which is a year away.
I think there's another one in April.
Well, that aspect.
Okay.
But if she abides by the rules, how do people in the accounting, financial profession? I guess they have rules too.
The part about she not being called to bar is the one that I think needs clarification.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world, the fact that you did not attend the congregation does not mean that your degree is not conferred on you. Degrees can be conferred.
No, with the Council on Legal Education,
or in absence.
You have to be present, you have to be called to the bar, and you have to sign the roll of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's the rule. Prof, you want to say something?
Yes, you see, each profession has its own set rules. The legal profession requires a certain manner of self-presentation in order to qualify to be awarded your degree. As Yemi rightly pointed out and explained, she cannot but be so conscious of the implications. You only want to challenge the authority. And in this case, it's most unfortunate that she did so. Please, if you come to the diplomatic profession and your name, or you are to answer the name diplomat, please, it goes a very long way. That's why one expression, very common, when you engage in an activity that is said to be incompatible with the status of a diplomat, please, you immediately lose the status of having your diplomatic protection.
But are you saying what she's wearing
So-
is peculiar to the law profession
No.
or peculiar to the Nigerian law profession?
Nigerian law profession, what does it require? You have a legal counsel. The issue is that you are supposed to have a particular manner of dressing. That's the issue. But you choose not to comply with it. And I'm saying the system should
Constitution
deny.
gives you freedoms.
Please hold on. This freedom, why is it that the regulation of the Legal Education Council not reckon with the Constitution?
Old. They didn't realize that.
Well, the truth of the
No,
matter,
but-
the truth of the matter is about protocols.
Precisely.
In every profession, there are protocols,
To
ethics,
respect.
etiquette. Look, at the call to bar ceremony, once the body of benchers is seated, you are not allowed in if you come late. Okay? If you come late after the body of benchers have filed in, you are kept outside. You will have to wait for the next call to
Or like
bar.
a president
It is
or-
that strict.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
And it's the same thing, if it is the president. So in certain situations, there are rules. But I think that this lady has taken a bold, if you may add, courageous step to test the rule. Because no rule stands, no law stands, except it is tested.
I don't think she's bold. The issue is just,
what
it's
would you
ignorance.
Why would you call it
Please.
ignorance?
The mere fact that she's even a lawyer makes it a
So she's
desideratum.
ignorant of what?
Ignorance of the fact that her future is unnecessarily being redefined by her attitudinal disposition.
Well, I think the Council on Legal Education and the body of benchers will
Will have the final
address
word.
this
Have to
because
resolve it.
an issue has been raised
But,
for the first time in the
should
history
be,
of that institution.
she's
We've
not-
got to go.
Yeah.
You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.